Everyone froze when the water hit her face. Silence swallowed the luxury hall in one breath. She stood there, soaked, humiliated, eyes lowered. People whispering and laughing, not knowing that the woman they were mocking was the wife of a man who owned the very empire they were worshiping. Moments later, a single sentence would turn the entire room upside down and destroy reputations forever. This night, supposed to be a celebration of fashion, power, and status, the elite of the city gathered. Inside a golden glass palace, chandeliers, glowing music, soft brands, screaming wealth, and influence models walked confidently. Designers smiled. Proudly, journalists waited for drama, and that drama walked in quietly, wearing a simple white dress. No diamonds, no heavy makeup, no designer tags screaming on her body. Just elegance, calm, and grace. Her name was Alina, and nobody there knew who she really was. She walked slowly, holding her small clutch, breathing deeply because crowds made her nervous. She was not used to such places, even though she could buy the entire building with a single signature tonight. She did not come as a billionaire wife. She came as herself, curious, supportive, and anonymous. She wanted to see the world her husband belonged to without his shadow, without his protection. Alina paused near the entrance, feeling hundreds of eyes judging, measuring, dismissing her. With cruel accuracy, the whispers started immediately. Who let her in? Is she staff? Is she lost? Does she even know where she is? The brand owner, Victoria, queen of luxury, sharp tongue. Sharper eyes noticed her from across the hall. Victoria built her name on exclusivity. Cruelty disguised as confidence. She hated anything that did not fit her vision of wealth and power. Alina walked closer to a display, touching fabric, gently admiring craftsmanship. Victoria approached with forced smile, eyes cold as steel, and asked her in a sweet, poisonous voice, "Excuse me, miss, are you aware this section is only for VIP guests?" Alina smiled politely and replied softly, "I am just looking." The smile vanished. Victoria laughed loudly, drawing attention, and said, "Looking does not mean belonging, dear. Some places are not meant for everyone." People around chuckled. Phones lifted, recording began. Alina felt her cheeks burn, but stayed calm. She had faced worse in life: poverty, hunger, silence before love found her. Victoria stepped closer, invading her space, and said, "Did you sneak in through the service entrance? Or are you someone's assistant trying to feel important tonight?" Alina shook her head gently and said, "I was invited." "That was the wrong answer." Victoria grabbed a glass of water from a passing tray and without hesitation threw it straight into Alina. Face water dripping from her hair onto her dress. Gasps filled the hall. Some laughed, some froze. Security hesitated, unsure whose side to take. Alina stood still, hands shaking, heart pounding, not from pain but disbelief. She had never been treated like this, not even when she had nothing. Victoria crossed her arms, satisfied, and said, "Let that cool you down next time. Learn your place. This is a house of power, not charity." The room buzzed with excitement. Humiliation is entertainment for the rich. Alina slowly wiped her face, eyes shining, not with tears, but with something far more dangerous: dignity. She whispered, "You should not have done that." Victoria laughed again and said, "Or what will you cry? Call your poor boyfriend." People erupted in laughter again, and that was the moment the doors behind them opened heavy. Footsteps echoed through the hall. Conversations died instantly. The air changed like a storm had entered. Quietly, a tall man in a perfectly tailored black suit walked in. Eyes, dark, expression unreadable. His presence commanded silence. Without effort, some recognized him instantly. Faces drained of color, whispers turned to fear. That man was Adam Rain, the youngest billionaire in the country, owner of international brands, hotels, media, fashion, finance, the invisible king behind many of the names displayed in this very hall. Victoria stiffened, then forced a confident smile. Adjusting her posture, she rushed forward, extending her hand, and said, "Adam, what an honor. We were just dealing with a small disturbance." Adam did not look at her. His eyes were locked on one person only. Alina, standing wet, shaken, but unbroken when his gaze met hers. "Everything?" Kane snapped. He walked past Victoria like she did not exist. Every step Heavy with restrained fury, he stopped in front of Alina, gently took her hands, voice low. Controlled, "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, trying to smile, but her lips trembled. Adam turned slowly to face the room, his silence louder than any scream. He then spoke words that would echo in every corner of the fashion world for years to come. "She is my wife," and in that moment, power changed sides. The laughter died, throats went dry, Victoria's face turned pale. Eyes wide, lips trembling. The phone's recording shook as people realized history was unfolding. The woman they mocked, the woman soaked in water, was the queen they never saw coming, and this was only the beginning. The room felt like it stopped breathing after his words. Every face turned toward Alina with disbelief, shame, and fear mixing in the air. Victoria stumbled backward as if struck physically, her confidence shattered in seconds. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Adam stepped slightly in front of Alina, a protective wall, his voice calm but dangerous. "You threw water on my wife because you thought she did not belong here." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Reporters lowered cameras, unsure whether to continue recording or hide. Adam continued, slowly, each word cutting deeper. "You've built this brand on exclusivity, but tonight you crossed a line. No apology can erase." Victoria finally found her voice, laughing, nervously trying to save herself. "Adam, this is a misunderstanding. I did not know. She was your wife. If I had known." Adam raised his hand, silencing her. Knowing should never be the condition for respect. Alina gently touched his arm, whispering, "Adam, please let it go." But he looked down at her, eyes soft only for her, then turned back to the crowd, harder than steel. "This woman beside me stood with me when I had nothing, when I slept in my office, when banks laughed at my ideas, when doors closed in my face. She chose simplicity, not because she lacks wealth, but because she does not need to prove anything." Unlike many here, heads lowered, some shifted uncomfortably. Victoria tried again, forcing tears. "I am deeply sorry, Alina." "I truly am," Adam replied. "Apology accepted or not is not your decision." He turned to the organizers of the event. "You invited us tonight, your brand partners, your sponsors, your future. They all belong to me." Murmurs turned to panic. One by one, people realized contracts were dying in real time. Adam spoke louder, now effective immediately. "Every company under Rain Group will withdraw from any association with Victoria Couture." Gasps exploded. Victoria dropped to her knees, literally begging, "Please, Adam. Years of work, my empire, my life." Alina stepped forward softly. Victoria looked up, desperate. "Alina," said quietly, "I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to become cruel like you." Silence fell heavier than before. Adam took Alina's hand and led her out. Cameras followed, security parted the crowd like waves. Outside, flashes exploded. But Alina walked with her head high, water still damp on her dress, now shining like armor. Inside the hall, sponsors began canceling calls. "Assistance," cried Victoria, sat alone, surrounded by luxury that suddenly meant nothing. And as Adam opened the car door for Alina, he whispered, "I should have never let you walk into that place alone." She smiled, tired but peaceful, and said, "Now they know who I am, but more importantly, who I am not." And the city would wake up the next morning to headlines screaming about the woman in white, the water thrown, the billionaire revealed, and the night arrogance destroyed itself. The next morning, the city woke up buzzing like a wounded hive. Headlines exploded across screens, phones buzzed nonstop, and the fashion world shook from its core. Victoria Couture stocks crashed before noon. Sponsors pulled out, models terminated contracts overnight. Insiders whispered that the brand was finished. But while the world obsessed over downfall, Alina sat quietly in her sunlit kitchen, holding a warm cup of tea, staring out the window, wondering how kindness had turned into spectacle. Adam watched her carefully, guilt heavy on his chest. He protected her publicly, but failed to protect her heart. The humiliation replayed in her mind, not the water, but the laughter, the judgment, the way people felt entitled to crush someone they believed was small. Adam finally spoke softly. "You never wanted this attention." Alina shook her head. "No, I wanted to belong without titles, without fear." Adam reached for her hand. "You belong everywhere because of who you are, not because of me." But she smiled sadly. The world does not see that it sees labels, wealth names, power. Later that day, Alina insisted on returning to her normal, routine, simple clothes. Quiet cafe visits, grocery shopping. Adam resisted at first, fearing eyes and cameras, but she needed to reclaim herself. The cafe owner recognized her immediately, hands shaking, apologizing, excessively offering free drinks. Alina thanked him, politely paid anyway, and sat alone again. Eyes followed, whispers returned, but different now. Admiration, curiosity, envy, still judgment. She realized fame had simply changed flavor, not nature. Meanwhile, Victoria faced her own storm, locked in her penthouse, lawyers calling, employees resigning, her phone flooded with hatred and mockery. She stared at her reflection, makeup smeared, hair undone, whispering, I did not know, I did not know. But deep down she did know. Cruelty had always been her language, power her excuse. Days later, Adam announced a charity fashion initiative focused on supporting unknown designers without wealth or connections. Alina would lead it quietly behind the scenes, refusing cameras, refusing credit when asked why. Adam said, my wife taught me that power means lifting, not crushing. The announcement stunned the industry. Some praised, some accused it of damage control, but applications poured in. Hope revived for many unknown talents. Alina worked day and night, reading stories, watching sketches, meeting young designers who reminded her of herself, once ignored, overlooked. But resilient. One evening, a young girl hugged Alina, crying, saying, you saw me when no one else did. Alina held her tightly, realizing pain had transformed into purpose. Yet shadows remained. Whispers questioned her worth, accused her of hiding behind. Her husband. Alina overheard one comment at a meeting, she only matters because of Adam. She excused herself, walked to the balcony, breathing deeply. Adam followed, angry, ready to confront, but she stopped him. Let them speak, she said calmly. Their words cannot change my truth. Weeks later, Victoria attempted a public apology video, crying, admitting mistakes, but the internet was unforgiving. Sponsors gone, trust broken, silence replaced her once loud presence. One night she watched an interview of Alina, refusing to name her, wearing simple clothes again, saying kindness should not require wealth. Victoria turned off the screen, tears falling, not for her empire but for the humanity she had lost. And in that quiet moment she understood. The water she threw had not soaked Alina, it had drowned herself. Months passed and the storm slowly settled, but the ripples remained. Alina Foundation grew quietly, without noise, without grand launches. Designers from small towns, from broken homes, from forgotten streets found doors opening for the first time. Fashion shows were held in community halls instead of palaces. Talent mattered more than tags. Adam stayed in the background, proud, watching Alina shine in her own way. One afternoon, Alina received an unexpected letter, handwritten, trembling lines, apologetic, humble. It was from Victoria, asking for a meeting. No cameras, no press, just two women. Alina sat with the letter for a long time, memories returning, the water, the laughter, the pain, but also the lesson. She looked at Adam, who said nothing, leaving the choice to her. Alina agreed. They met in a small cafe, far from luxury. Victoria arrived alone, dressed plainly, no makeup, eyes tired. She apologized without excuses, without mentioning ignorance. She admitted, I measured people by money because I was empty inside. Alina listened silently, then said, forgiveness does not rebuild what you destroyed, but it can stop more damage. Victoria nodded, understanding. She left lighter but uncertain. Alina returned to work stronger than before. Later that year, Alina was invited to speak at an international leadership forum. She almost declined, fearing spotlight. But Adam encouraged her to tell her story, not as a billionaire wife, but as a woman who had been invisible on stage. She spoke calmly about dignity, about how cruelty hides behind exclusivity, about how power reveals character, not status. The audience stood in silence, then applause thundered, not because of who she married, but because of who she was. After the speech, a journalist asked her if she regretted attending that fashion event. Alina smiled softly. No, it showed me the truth of people and the strength within me that night. Alina and Adam walked through the city lights hand in hand, no security, no spotlight, just two souls who had survived a storm together. Adam said you changed the industry without destroying yourself, Alina replied. I almost did, but compassion saved me somewhere across the city. Victoria watched a small independent fashion show sponsored by Alina Foundation, seeing unknown designers shine. She did not belong there anymore, but she clapped quietly, understanding redemption begins with humility. The world moved on as it always does, chasing new scandals, new heroes, but somewhere deep in its memory the story remained. The night water was thrown, judgment revealed itself, and a quiet woman reminded everyone that true power never shouts, it stands still and lets the world bow on its own. The years that followed rewrote destinies in ways no headline could capture. Alina's life became a balance between silence and impact. She refused interviews, declined awards, and chose presence over praise. Yet her influence spread quietly. Universities invited her, foundations mirrored her model, and young women wrote letters saying they wore simple clothes with pride. Now Adam continued expanding his empire, but with a changed philosophy. Boardrooms felt different, policies shifted. Empathy became strategy. One evening during a charity showcase, Alina stood backstage watching a nervous designer adjust trembling hands. She whispered, "You belong here." And those words carried more weight than any contract. The show succeeded not because of luxury, but honesty. Applause felt warmer, real. Meanwhile, Victoria faded from public memory. Her brand dissolved, assets sold quietly. She taught design at a small institute. No fame, no cameras, just students and fabric. One day, a student asked her about the past scandal. Victoria paused, then said, "Power without kindness is just fear wearing perfume." The student nodded, not knowing the depth behind those words. Alina and Adam celebrated their anniversary privately at the same cafe where Alina once felt judged. The owner smiled genuinely this time. No whispers, no cameras, only respect. Alina looked around, remembering the girl she was that night, soaked, humiliated, and unseen, and she thanked her silently because she had survived. Later that night, Adam asked her if she would ever step back into that fashion hall. Alina smiled softly, maybe. But next time, not to prove anything, only to remind them that humanity never goes out of style. The city lights glowed outside as life continued, ordinary, extraordinary, intertwined, and somewhere a glass of water reflected a lesson learned too late for some, but just in time for others. That dignity does not come from labels, wealth, or power. It comes from how you treat the person you think has none. And that was the real legacy of the night. Everything changed. Time continued its quiet march, and with it came moments that tested Alina's strength in new ways. Fame had faded, but expectations had grown. People now assumed perfection from her kindness, as if pain, once endured, meant immunity forever. At a regional fashion workshop, a sponsor dismissed a young man harshly mocking his accent and clothes. The room froze, waiting for Alina's reaction. She felt that familiar sting rise, but this time she did not freeze. She spoke calmly, correcting the sponsor, reminding everyone that talent does not need permission. The room shifted, respect earned. Again, not through wealth, but courage. Later that night, Alina confessed to Adam that scars never fully disappear. They only teach us where to stand. Adam held her hand, saying, "Scars are proof you lived honestly, not safely." Their foundation expanded into education, funding, mentorship programs, and safe spaces for creatives ignored by mainstream voices. Letters arrived. Daily stories of rejection, poverty, hope. Alina read each one, refusing assistance, wanting to feel every truth personally. Sometimes she cried, sometimes she smiled, but she never turned away. Across town, Victoria struggled with her quieter life, but found strange peace teaching, watching students create without fear. One evening, she overheard students praising Alina without knowing their teacher history. Victoria smiled sadly, understanding some lessons are meant to be lived, not taught. The world Moved faster technology trends, scandals, but the story of water and dignity became a case study in business schools, ethics, seminars, and leadership talks. Stripped of names, but heavy with meaning, Alina once overheard a young woman telling her friend, "Never judge someone by their clothes, you never know who they are." Alina turned away, eyes shining not from recognition, but relief. Adam later asked if she ever wished she had shouted that night or fought back publicly. Alina answered, "No, silence was my strength, your words were my shield, and compassion was my victory as seasons changed the city." Forgot details, but remembered the feeling discomfort when arrogance meets truth, and somewhere inside many hearts a quiet shift occurred. People paused. Before judging, hesitated, before mocking, and that pause was Alina's greatest triumph. Another chapter unfolded when the foundation announced its first global showcase. Designers from different countries gathered, sharing stories stitched with pain, resilience, and hope. Alina walked among them, not as a figure of authority, but as a listener absorbing every journey. One designer from a war-torn region handed her a scarf saying this was made from survival. Alina held it close, feeling the weight of lived experience on opening night as applause echoed. Alina stood in the shadows, letting others shine. Adam watched from afar, knowing this was her true stage. Later, during a private dinner, a powerful investor mocked the concept, calling it charity. Fashion Alina met his gaze calmly and replied, "Creativity does not need your approval to exist." The investor laughed nervously, realizing power had shifted again after the event. Messages flooded social media, praising the authenticity. Many admitted they had once judged people by appearances and now questioned themselves. Alina read those comments quietly, understanding change rarely screams, it whispers. Victoria followed the showcase online, recognizing names of former students, smiling with pride, knowing her small redemption lay in teaching better values at home. Alina and Adam later visited a small village where a young girl had written asking for help setting up a tailoring class. They funded machines, training, and space. Alina sat on the floor with the women, sewing, laughing, sharing tea, no cameras present. One woman said, "You are rich, but you sit like us." Alina replied, "Wealth is loud, peace is quiet." That night, under open skies, Adam asked her if she ever felt tired of carrying meaning for others. Alina smiled honestly, "Sometimes, but then I remember how tired I felt standing alone, soaked and judged, and I know why. I keep going." The stars above witnessed a life transformed, not by revenge, but by resolve, and the world continued, learning slowly, imperfectly, that the greatest revolutions often begin in silence. As influence grew, so did resistance. Some elite circles began mocking the shift, calling it sentimental, accusing Alina of weakening standards. Luxury blogs whispered that her movement was temporary, a trend born from scandal. Alina heard it all, but chose not to respond publicly. Instead, she invited critics to closed workshops where designers spoke for themselves. Watching hardened faces soften was enough. One critic later admitted he had never seen talent without ego before. Adam faced pressure to board members, questioned investments without obvious profit. Adam answered simply, "Impact is the return." Slowly, even corporations learn that values attract loyalty more than logos. Alina spent more time mentoring young women, teaching them confidence, boundaries, and self-worth. One girl asked, "How do you stay gentle after being humiliated?" Alina answered, "Because bitterness would mean they still control me." Meanwhile, Victoria attended a graduation ceremony where her student won an award sponsored by Alina Foundation. Victoria clapped quietly, tears forming, realizing circles can close without collisions. The city hosted another exclusive fashion gala years later. Alina attended again, wearing the same simple white dress. Cameras flashed, but she walked calmly inside. Whispers followed, but no laughter, only curiosity and respect. Someone spilled water accidentally nearby. The room tensed, but Alina smiled, helping clean it, diffusing fear with grace. Adam watched from afar, proud, knowing power had finally learned manners. That night, headlines did not scream scandal. They spoke of humility, evolution, and the woman who changed fashion without changing herself. And somewhere deep beneath fabric lights and applause, A lesson settled permanently. Never underestimate quiet strength because it outlives noise. Years later, the story became legend told without names, sometimes distorted but always carrying the same heartbeat, a reminder of a moment when judgment failed and humanity answered. Alina rarely thought of that night anymore, but its echo guided her decisions. She declined a political offer, understanding that power without freedom was another cage instead. She expanded the foundation into rural areas, teaching skills, dignity, and independence. Adam supported, quietly stepping further away from spotlight, letting her vision lead. One afternoon, Alina visited a school funded by the program. Children surrounded her, laughing, unaware of titles. One little girl asked, "Why do you dress like my mother?" Alina knelt, smiling. "Because your mother is powerful." The teacher wiped tears, realizing what representation truly means across the city. Victoria walked past a billboard featuring a foundation showcase. She did not stop, she did not hide. She simply nodded, accepting her place in the story. Not as a villain redeemed by applause, but as a lesson preserved by memory. A journalist once asked Alina if she believed karma was real. Alina replied, "Karma is not punishment. It is revelation. People eventually see themselves clearly, and that is enough." The world kept spinning, trends changed, luxury rebranded itself with softer words and deeper colors, but some habits died slowly. Yet every time someone paused before judging someone by appearance, a thread of that night lived on. Adam and Alina aged gracefully together, building not an empire but a legacy rooted in values. One evening, as rain tapped gently on the window, Alina held a glass of water, watching light refract through it, smiling softly, knowing something once meant to humiliate had become a symbol of awakening, and the silence that followed that night still spoke louder than any applause. In the final turning of the story time softened everything without erasing meaning. Alina's hair showed hints of silver, wisdom rested easily on her face. She no longer needed to lead every initiative, others carried the torch she had lit. She walked through the foundation halls, hearing laughter, seeing confidence blooming where doubt once lived. Adam watched her from a distance, realizing love had given him more wealth than money ever could. On the anniversary of the night that changed everything, Alina returned alone to the city, wearing the same calm expression. She stood outside the original fashion hall, now renovated, renamed. Its doors open to young designers without barriers. She walked inside unnoticed and smiled, not at the building but at the journey she had survived. Somewhere, a young woman entered nervously, wearing simple clothes, clutching hope. Alina stepped toward her and whispered, "You belong here." And in that moment, the circle completed. No billionaire reveal, no revenge, no spectacle, only quiet truth passed forward. The city lights glowed outside as they always had, indifferent to power, but faithful to time, and the lesson remained: eternal dignity does not demand recognition. It waits patiently until the world is ready to understand, and when it does, it changes everything. Asterisk.